The moment the music started, the entire ballroom fell silent, not because of the melody, but because of her. People had been whispering about her all evening, the CEO's daughter, the girl with the scars. Some said she never danced. Some said she never even stayed long at public events. Others claimed she avoided mirrors and cameras because of the marks that stretched across the side of her face and neck, reminders of an accident that had almost taken her life years ago. But that night, under the golden lights of the grand ballroom, she stood alone near the edge of the dance floor, trembling slightly as couples moved gracefully around her. And somehow, I was the one walking toward her. Before we continue this story, take a second to support the channel. If you believe kindness still matters in this world, please like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Your support keeps these stories alive. I hadn't planned to be at that gala. In fact, I almost didn't belong there at all. I had started working as a temporary technician for the event management company that handled lighting and sound for corporate events. My job was simple: set up equipment, fix problems, stay invisible. The gala that night was one of the biggest events the city had seen that year. It celebrated the anniversary of a technology empire built by one of the most powerful CEOs in the country. Everything about the venue screamed well. Crystal chandeliers hung from a ceiling so high it seemed like another sky. Long marble columns lined the ballroom. Waiters in white gloves carried trays of sparkling drinks that probably cost more than my entire weekly paycheck. I spent most of the evening near the control booth, adjusting lighting cues while watching the guests laugh, dance, and take photos. That was when I noticed her. She stood near the far wall, wearing a deep blue dress that shimmered like water under moonlight. The dress was elegant, but what drew attention was not the fabric. It was the faint, jagged scars running from her temple down along her jawline and disappearing beneath the collar of the dress. Most people pretended not to stare, but they did. Some looked with pity, others with curiosity. A few with uncomfortable sympathy. She noticed every glance. You could see it in the way her shoulders tightened slightly each time someone's eyes lingered too long. Yet despite that, she stood there with quiet dignity, hands clasped gently in front of her, as if she had forced herself to attend an event she knew would hurt. I later learned that she rarely came to gatherings like this. The accident had happened 5 years earlier, a car crash on a rainy night. The driver who hit her had been drunk, speeding through a red light. She survived, but the fire that followed left permanent scars across her face and upper body. For months, she stayed hidden from the public. Even when she recovered physically, the emotional wounds remained. The world had been cruel. Headlines talked about the accident. Photos of her hospital recovery leaked online. Social media strangers debated her appearance as if she were a character in a movie rather than a real person trying to heal. Over time, she stopped attending public events entirely. But that night was different. It was her father's company anniversary, and he had asked her personally to attend. Still standing there alone near the dance floor, she looked like someone trapped between courage and fear. The orchestra began playing a slow, elegant melody. Couples stepped onto the floor. But she didn't move. Instead, she turned slightly away from the crowd, trying to disappear into the shadows. And that was when something inside me refused to stay quiet. I don't know exactly why. Maybe it was the loneliness in her eyes. Maybe it was the way everyone else politely avoided her as if kindness required too much courage. Or maybe it was because I had grown up watching my own sister struggle with the scars of a childhood illness that made people stare. Whatever the reason, my feet started moving before my brain had time to argue. I left the control booth, walked past the marble pillars, and crossed the edge of the dance floor toward her. A few nearby guests noticed and looked confused. After all, I was clearly not one of the high-profile attendees. My simple black suit marked me as staff rather than guest. But I didn't stop. When I reached her, she looked up in surprise. Her eyes were not what people expected. They were bright, deep, full of emotion. The kind of eyes that belonged to someone who had seen pain but refused to let it destroy them completely. For a moment, she seemed unsure what I wanted. Then I gently extended my hand. Not dramatically, not loudly. Just a simple invitation. Around us, whispers began. Someone laughed quietly. Someone else muttered something about embarrassment. But she wasn't listening to them. She was looking at my hand, and then she looked back at my face as if searching for something. Pity, curiosity, mockery. But there was none of that, only sincerity. For a few seconds she hesitated, the weight of years of judgment pressing on her shoulders. Then slowly, she placed her hand in mine. Music swelled as we stepped onto the dance floor. At first the crowd didn't know how to react. Some stopped dancing, others watched quietly. The CEO himself, standing across the room speaking with investors, suddenly turned when he realized who was on the floor. His expression shifted instantly, from confusion to concern to something else entirely. Hope. The dance itself was simple. I wasn't a professional dancer. Neither was she. But the music guided us. Slow steps, gentle turns, nothing complicated, yet something extraordinary happened during those few minutes. At first she moved stiffly, clearly aware of every pair of eyes in the room. But gradually the tension left her shoulders. Her breathing steadied. The fear faded. By the middle of the song, something beautiful had appeared on her face. A smile. Not a forced social smile. A real one. For the first time that evening, she wasn't thinking about the scars. She was simply dancing, and somehow the room felt different. The whispers stopped, the laughter disappeared. Even the orchestra seemed to play more softly, as if recognizing the moment unfolding in front of them. When the music ended, the ballroom erupted into applause. Not polite applause, real applause. People stood. Some wiped tears from their eyes. The CEO himself walked forward slowly through the crowd. I suddenly realized what I had done. I had just danced with the daughter of one of the most powerful men in the country, without permission, without introduction, while wearing a staff badge. For a second, I wondered if security would escort me out, but instead, something unexpected happened. The CEO approached his daughter first. He gently placed his hand on her shoulder, and then he did something that stunned everyone. He hugged her tightly. The kind of hug a father gives when he realizes something precious has returned. She held on to him longer than anyone expected, and when she stepped back, her eyes were shining. Then she turned toward me. There was emotion in her expression that words couldn't fully explain. Gratitude, relief, something deeper. And though she didn't say much in that moment, the meaning was clear in the quiet sincerity of her voice. She said she would never forget me. The room fell silent again, not because of pity, but because everyone understood that something powerful had just happened. A simple act of kindness had broken through years of pain. Later that night, as guests slowly returned to their conversations, I slipped quietly back toward the control booth. I didn't expect anything else from the evening. The dance itself had already been enough. But just before I reached the equipment desk, someone tapped my shoulder. It was one of the CEO's assistants. He politely asked me to come with him. My heart raced the entire walk across the ballroom. Inside a private lounge, the CEO stood near a large window overlooking the city lights. For a moment he studied me carefully. Then he did something unexpected. He thanked me, not as a businessman, not as a powerful executive, but as a father. He explained that his daughter had spent years avoiding situations like that dance floor. Therapists had tried to help her rebuild confidence, but nothing had worked the way that simple moment had. He said that sometimes courage doesn't come from grand gestures. Sometimes it comes from one person choosing kindness when everyone else chooses silence. That night changed more than I realized. In the weeks that followed, his daughter slowly began appearing in public again. She started working with charities that supported burn survivors. She spoke openly about self-acceptance. Her story began inspiring thousands of people who had once felt invisible, and every now and then when our paths crossed at events, she would smile in the same warm way she did during that dance, as if reminding me that one small moment can echo through someone's life forever. Before we reach the end of this story, here's something special. Comment the word kindness below if you believe one simple act of compassion can change someone's world, because sometimes the smallest gestures create the biggest miracles. Years later, I still remember that ballroom. The golden lights, the quiet music, the nervous courage in her eyes when she first took my hand, and the way an entire room changed when someone who had been judged for so long finally felt seen. Stories like this remind us that scars, whether physical or emotional, do not define a person's worth. Kindness does. And sometimes all it takes to remind someone of their strength is a single dance. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like the video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this. Your support helps spread messages of hope to people who need them most. Because somewhere out there tonight, someone is standing alone on the edge of their own dance floor, and your kindness might be the hand that changes everything. The applause in the ballroom slowly faded that night, but the moment never truly ended. Long after the music stopped, people continued whispering about the dance. Some called it beautiful, others called it brave. A few said it was the most genuine thing they had ever seen at a corporate gala filled with rehearsed speeches and expensive smiles. But for me, it was simply something that felt right. After the CEO thanked me privately, I returned to my normal routine. The next morning, I was back at work with the event crew packing cables, dismantling lighting rigs, and loading equipment trucks. Life moved forward the same way it always had. Or at least, that's what I thought. 3 days later, while I was repairing a damaged spotlight in the warehouse, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. At first, I ignored it, assuming it was a telemarketer. But the phone rang again almost immediately. Curious, I answered. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, and slightly nervous. It was the assistant I had met the night of the gala. He explained that the CEO's daughter wanted to meet me again. For a moment, I thought he was joking. People like them didn't usually remember people like me. A temporary technician who happened to be in the right place at the right time rarely stayed in the story after the event ended. But this time was different. She had asked for me specifically. The meeting was arranged at a quiet cafe near the company's headquarters, far from the bright lights of the ballroom where everything had started. When I arrived, she was already there. She wore simple clothes this time, nothing like the elegant blue dress from the gala. A light sweater, dark jeans, and her hair loosely tied back. The scars were still visible along the side of her face, but something about her presence had changed. She looked calmer, stronger, not hidden anymore. People in the cafe glanced at her occasionally, but she didn't shrink away like she had at the gala. Instead, she sat confidently sipping tea while looking out the window at the busy city street. When she noticed me, a warm smile appeared instantly. That same smile from the dance floor. For a moment, we both seemed unsure how to begin. But eventually the conversation started naturally. She told me that the night of the gala had been one of the hardest nights of her life. For years she had avoided mirrors, avoided crowds, avoided cameras, avoided everything that reminded her of how the world saw her now. The accident had not only changed her appearance, it had changed how people treated her. Some pitied her, some avoided looking at her entirely. And some were cruel enough to whisper things they thought she couldn't hear. Over time, she began believing those whispers. She believed she no longer belonged in places filled with confident, beautiful people. But that dance had interrupted those thoughts. For the first time in years, someone had approached her without hesitation, without pity, without curiosity, just kindness. She explained that the moment she took my hand, something shifted inside her mind. It wasn't a miracle. It didn't erase the pain of the past 5 years. But it reminded her of something she had forgotten. She was still human, still worthy of normal moments, still capable of joy. Hearing that made me realize how powerful a small action can be. To me, the dance had lasted only a few minutes. To her, it had opened a door that had been closed for years. Over the next few months, our unexpected friendship grew. We met occasionally for coffee or quiet walks through the park. Sometimes we talked about serious things, her recovery, my family, the struggles we both had faced in life. Other times we talked about simple things like movies, books, and the strange behavior of people in crowded cities. Despite her background, she was surprisingly humble. The wealth and influence surrounding her family had never shaped her personality the way people expected. Instead, the accident had made her deeply empathetic toward others who felt invisible or misunderstood. One afternoon, she told me about an idea that had been growing in her mind since the gala. She wanted to start a foundation for burn survivors and people with visible scars. Not just to provide medical support, but emotional support, a place where people could rebuild confidence without feeling judged. The project was ambitious. It would involve hospitals, therapists, community programs, and national campaigns about self-acceptance. At first, she was afraid to lead something that public, but the memory of the dance gave her courage. She said if one moment could change her life, maybe her story could help others change theirs. Her father supported the idea immediately. Within months, the foundation was launched. At the first public event, hundreds of survivors attended. Some had burns, some had surgical scars. Others carried emotional wounds that were invisible but equally painful. When she stepped onto the stage to speak, the room fell silent. Many people expected a formal speech, but what they received was something much more powerful. She told them about the night of the gala, about standing alone on the edge of a dance floor, believing she didn't belong, and about the stranger who walked across the room and asked her to dance like she was just another person. She explained how that moment reminded her that scars do not erase humanity. The audience listened in complete silence. Many cried. Some nodded in understanding, because everyone in that room carried a story that felt similar. After the speech ended, the crowd stood in a long line to thank her. Some said her courage gave them hope. Others said they had avoided public spaces for years until hearing about the event. The foundation quickly became one of the most respected charities in the country, and though she became a public symbol of strength, she never forgot the simple beginning of it all. Sometimes after long charity events or exhausting meetings, we would laugh about how everything started with an awkward technician leaving his lighting booth to ask someone to dance. Life moved forward in ways neither of us expected. Years passed. The foundation expanded internationally, helping thousands of people rebuild confidence after traumatic injuries. And every year, on the anniversary of the company gala, the CEO hosted another celebration. But these events were different now. Instead of exclusive gatherings for wealthy investors, they included survivors from the foundation, doctors, volunteers, and families who had been helped by the program. The ballroom that once felt intimidating became a place filled with laughter, resilience, and acceptance. One year, as the orchestra began playing the first song of the evening, she looked at me with that familiar smile again, the same one from the night we first met. Without saying anything, she extended her hand. The crowd watched quietly as we stepped onto the dance floor again. But this time, she wasn't the lonely girl hiding near the wall. She was a leader, a survivor, and an inspiration to everyone in the room. And the applause that followed wasn't about the dance. It was about everything the moment represented. Before we finish this story, here's something I want to ask you personally. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in kindness, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind us of the power of compassion. Because sometimes the world changes not through grand speeches or powerful leaders. Sometimes it changes because one person sees another person standing alone and chooses to walk toward them. And somewhere out there tonight, someone is still waiting for that simple act of courage, a hand extended, a moment of kindness, or maybe just one dance they will never forget.